Welcome back to the Partnernomics Show. Man, had a good conversation today with Ken Bogard. Ken is an expert EOS implementer, but he has also started a company about 8 or 9 years ago called No Honesty. And so Ken has spent a significant amount of time just talking about being open, being honest, but being an effective communicator, both personally as well as inside of businesses and inside of these different team environments, which I'm sure all of us can appreciate, reflect back on our careers or maybe even the current circumstances that we find ourselves in, and know that more effective communication would certainly help us. Ken was kind enough to come on to the podcast and to share some of his insights and what he's learned over the years of studying honesty. So, hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Partnernomics Show, where industry thought leaders discuss the hottest topics in partnerships, ecosystems, and innovation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Awesome to be with you today. Today we are joined by Ken Bogard. Ken, how are things going today?
Awesome, Mark. You gotta pinch me. You know, it's a pretty blessed life. I'm trying not to brag, but a lot of good things going on. So.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. It's good to understand it could always be better, but it could certainly be a whole lot worse. But it's awesome when you're in a position where you really are taking in those blessings and then also doing what you're doing here, sharing those back out. So I appreciate your time.
Well, back at you, because I know I'm stealing time from you, getting real close to launching your next book. So, I feel blessed that you're taking the time for me. So back at you.
Well, thanks for the mention, and that'll get us a good opportunity to dig into your book and your topic. So, Ken is the founder of No Honesty, KNOW type of no. But as you can imagine, Ken's really dug into this topic deep. It's something near and dear to my heart, which I'll talk about a little bit more on the partnership side. But then Ken is also an expert level implementer with EOS. And so we'll have an opportunity to chat about that a little bit as well. But obviously, with Ken's background, he's done a lot of work with entrepreneurs and businesses. So this will be a fun conversation. Ken, if you don't mind, man, I always like starting with our guests just to kind of let's talk about the start. Like coming out of high school and then looking at this big world, trying to figure out which directions to go. What was your start into your professional career?
Yes, start into a professional career. I would say it was in college, I took a marketing class and I had this professor who I thought, finally, a professor who knows his stuff and can teach me something. Because sometimes you get professors who are just taught by other professors. But I found somebody with a ton of experience in the business world. His name is Robert Fry. Ended up being a mentor for mine, but he brought Whirlpool into Asia, had all these fantastical things that he accomplished, and just a lion of a man. And I'm like, yeah, this guy, I was excited about it. Well, he opens up class, his first class, first day, and he opens it by saying, the single biggest issue with companies is, and I had my pen ready. I'm like, here we go.
Something profound's about ready to come out.
That's right. Here you go. And he said, the single biggest issue with companies is communication. And I literally dropped my pen. I dropped my pen and I thought, you got to be kidding me. Another fluffy communication class. There's no way grown human professional adults can't communicate. There's no way. And so I was just shocked by that. Boy, Mark, how naive I was. Because we can't. We are grown professional human adults that cannot communicate. We make noise, but we're not really communicating with one another. And so I get into the working world and I realize, including myself, how many people aren't being honest, how many people aren't open with each other, how much and often we miss each other in terms of saying what we actually need to say, whether it's hard or not. And I just found this thing within me building that, like, I'm going to do something about this someday, somehow. And here we are many years later, and I'm doing it.
That is awesome, man. That's awesome. Let's dive in. I want to kind of pop the lid off of this can.
Do it.
And let's kind of dive into the book, your kind of life's work that it's turning into with no honesty. Like whenever we talk about words of, trust and being open and transparent and honest and those sorts of things, maybe I guess in all of our own heads we have a definition for what that means, and then doing the right thing is maybe even another part or a piece of that. But if you would, let's kind of dive into the science and the definitions to as a good starting point, hopefully, with your book and the work that you do in honesty.
Yeah. Let's start off with hopefully not upsetting your listeners too much. I think they need to hear you are not being 100% honest and you are not being 100% open 100% of the time. So everybody needs to hear that. Like Mark, you and me, we get this stuff, we love this stuff, but we're not doing those two things. And so sometimes I'll share what I'm about to share, and people are like, yeah, I'm not. You're not. The science and the statistics and the data and everything else point to we are not. And so the two things to really make communication simple and easy to understand is I'm after real communication. And to have that, we need to have two things: honesty and openness. So if you hear the expression open and honest, you hear it all the time, right? Be open and honest with me. But people are so quick to dive into honesty, like almost they skip over the word openness and they don't even use it. But it's a whole separate word, and honest. And so we just miss it, especially in this country. And so here's what that means. If we break it down, hopefully everybody listening is like, that's what I'm missing. Like, that's what's not happening in my life or in my relationships. So honesty is this: it is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. That's all honesty is, right? Just a genuineness about yourself. Be you. Let your freak flag fly. Like Mark, I'm looking at you and I'm like, to do podcasts well, you got to be yourself. People won't want to be a part of this if you cannot be yourself, right? And so you're creating this platform where people can be that. And we're not doing this. We're not being honest. We're being fake. And so really, when I'm working with clients or people in my life, I want you to be unabashedly yourself. Just be you. I don't even care if it's something freaky or crazy or whatever. Who I appreciate in my life or who I want in my life are honest human beings to the core. Now, the other side of that is openness. And especially for type A, type D personalities or leaders, this is the tougher hill to climb. Openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. So really shutting it all down and just listening to what they have to say. You don't have to agree. Nobody's saying you have to agree with everything or accept everything, but really listen to what they're saying. That is openness. And honesty is nothing without openness, right? It's complete waste. You're blabbering your mouth. You're saying things that people will not retain because they're not open to one another. It is the biggest issue with communication, bar none, across this entire country. We have a huge lack of openness. We can lean into honesty a little bit better. Openness, we do not have.
So, Ken, how does being truthful, how does truth fit into honesty, right? So when I think I'm being honest, I'm being authentic, I'm thinking of some different, maybe some synonyms that you would use, but I'm completely being myself. Does that mean that I'm also communicating and saying what I absolutely believe?
Yeah, that's great. So in the book, we stayed away from the word truth. For I think for moral, biblical reasons, right? There is a truth, and we don't know it as human man trying to be doing man things, right? So I think there is a formal truth that we will definitely fully embrace and understand someday. And so we try to stay away from truth. But is there your truth? Well, absolutely, Mark. There's a way you see things, only through your eyes, your experience, the shoes you walked in. And then I have my way I see things. And so we can both have our truths per se, but it doesn't mean it's the absolute truth, right? And so that's why we framed it with honesty. Like if we can get people to be more truly and freely themselves, right? Mind and mouth saying the same thing. I think we have that person's truth if you wanted to use truth, but we try to stay away from it for the most part.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm thinking of one of gentlemen I love to read, Patrick Lencioni, right? Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and so many great books out there. The Advantage. Um, he talks a lot about stepping into companies, and I think this is where you do most of your work. So working with leadership teams and different folks inside of companies. I think back to my more than a dozen years at Sprint in corporate America, huge corporation. Then other small businesses, friends talking about their experiences and work. Um, let's kind of take that jump into companies and working in teams. How does no honesty, how do we leverage that and utilize those insights to help us in the business context?
Yeah, that's awesome. Did I give you that question or is that yours? That was awesome. No, it's a good one.
Inquiring minds.
Yeah, right. Because, well, I think about my team. So I primarily do EOS sessions with my clients. EOS is just an incredible, awesome operating system for any entrepreneur in the world. It is the best mousetrap out there. I've seen a lot of them. It's the best stuff. And what happens is your clients will come in and they'll work through the agenda. So just picture a leadership team. They're trying to set goals. They're trying to make sure they got the right person, achieving the right things, achieving well in their lane and their position in the company, that we're getting processes done, et cetera, all these things. But if a team cannot be open and honest, none of it works. Like actually the whole system's broken. If the team can't be vulnerable, if the person with the biggest ego in the room cannot lower his or her own ego and create room for other people, we do not have a team. We got a dictator and somebody that's just trying to trounce the team. So now you don't effectively have a team. You got somebody who's just bringing their sheep around to do their bidding or whatever. And that's a really hard way to run as an entrepreneur. I don't blame that person, but that's no way to be a team. So what happens is you have this power dynamic and it squashes everybody else in the room. So now they're not willing to be honest with this very powerful, air quotes, powerful person who is, by the way, a 99.9% DNA match to you and I, and everybody else in the room. They're just like any other human being. But we don't have the courage to say what we need to say. That person with the ego has not lowered their ego enough they can hear. And so we have that imbalance. That's a problem. And so when we do that, that dictator calls all the shots, sometimes good or bad. People don't have a voice. People aren't bought in. People don't want to roll in that direction for the company unless they want to be sheep for their whole life. That's just an example where you have a powerful person in the room, and that happens quite frequently with most leadership teams. But then other times, you got a pretty balanced team, but they're also not calling each other out. They're scared of hurting feelings. There's somebody who they love on the team who's not a fit for a position, but they won't say it. And so that position suffers for months, quarters, God forbid, years. And nobody says anything when really the right human thing to do is to tell that person exactly how you feel and exactly what they want. Like if anybody was talking trash about you and I, Mark, wouldn't you want to know that so you can do something about it? But when you don't know it and it becomes a surprise to you, you're like, where were you? Like, I thought you had my back. And so really teams to move the company faster, to put real issues on the table, to really be a strong, sustainable leadership team, you got to be open and honest.
So, Kim, whenever you're working with teams, certainly with leaders and leadership teams, I know you've done this a million times, but I just think of, whenever we go in and work with folks, it only takes about 60 seconds, right? Of having this open room and we're throwing questions out there. We're figuring out, what's the strategy? What's our history? What are we doing together? It doesn't take long at all to figure out who's the CEO, who's the founder, who's the marketing folks. I mean, all of these different roles, and also telling how honest they are with each other. what do you do as, this facilitator, this coach, this guide that's taking them through, let's say EOS? Um, what are some tools or even some conversations that you have whenever you notice there's this massive imbalance of power? And it's certainly unhealthy and probably a core reason of why a company is being held back. What do you do from a tools as well as a communications perspective? Because that could be some some thin ice.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a few questions that I have in my arsenal that save me from time to time, Mark, but I, truthfully, uh, I'm just myself. I'm calling it exactly how I see it, mind and mouth saying the same thing. And so, when somebody's dominating a room, let's just say it was Bob and he's talking at Sam, and I'm like, hey, Bob, love, thanks, appreciate the passion. I got to give everybody else a chance to speak up too. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, why is Bob talking so much and why is he doing the thing? And I'm not mad at Bob. I just understand he's trying to drive something home, but I'm just calling it how I see it. And I'm trying to illuminate to Bob he's dominating the room, but not in a brutal honesty way, because that's the wrong way to deliver honesty. It's more in a loving way. I mean, I'm 100% honest, but 100% loving. Like I care about the humans that come into my room, ego or not. And I just call it like I see it. And so if Bob dominates the room, if he's aggressively so, I rise to the level of whatever he's given off. And I might come at it a little bit more stern and say, hey, Bob, hold on. We got to give it a second. All right, Sam, what do you got? Let's give Sam a platform here too. And I'm fearless about it. And all I'm trying to do is break open that open and honest thing. And then I'll check in with Sam because sometimes that person who's lacking courage needs a little encouragement. And I'm like, Sam, he said some pretty tough stuff. And at least that's how I saw it. How do you see it? What do you want to share with Bob and what he just said? I'll give you a second if you need a second. And so it's just back and forth. And I'm trying not to be in the middle of it, but I'm trying to get them to engage appropriately.
I think we've all had those times where we've worked for bosses, or I could think back to when I was a young 18, 19-year-old in the Marines. I'm having receiving some very tough, honest, feedback, and it's completely unfiltered in those cases. And there's a lot of learnings that come from it. But I'd love to just kind of see if you could share maybe an example when being honest really came with some risk. I think back to the last time I had a real job before 11 years ago, whenever I started Partnernomics. The founder that I worked with was challenging and an egomaniac, to put it mildly, well known. And it's just kind of my DNA, I think, to take an approach like you are. I mean, be tactful, but
Yeah.
be open, be honest. And I feel that that's what they hired me to be and to do and to lead.
Right.
And it was actually a pretty short stint at that company, all for the better, right? But talk to us a little bit, because I know there's people back there saying, "Man, I'd love to tell my boss, or I'd love to tell my coworker, I'd love to tell my partner exactly what I think, but I'm afraid to." There's risk with that. What advice do
Yeah.
you give?
Oh, that's great. I would like to hear what you think too, because I know you do this all the time. So maybe take that question mark turnaround. Also, thank you for serving our country.
No, you're very welcome.
I
It was my
remember
honor.
that from when I first met you, but man, blessed. I didn't do it. I appreciate you doing it. It's awesome. So thank you. I will tell you that risk, there's risk in everything. So it already exists. It's everywhere. There is risk in not saying what you need to say. There's risk in saying it. And so I think people just need to open their eyes to that there's a lot of risk everywhere. You got a boss who is, for whatever reason, acting or behaving like he or she is. Don't focus on that. Focus on yourself and what you want to get across. And I would encourage most people to try as hard as they can to design the life they want. But I will tell you, when you are squashed or stifled by a human being, the risk of not saying what you need to say is that you are trapped under this human being with some sort of information stored up in your body, eating away physically, mentally, spiritually at you. The risk is your own mental health, right? Because you don't even get to be yourself. You're not walking around like a phony, fake human being, smiling and nodding at your boss, even though you don't feel that way. That to me is the bigger risk. Now, what is the risk? You tell your boss whatever you feel. And it doesn't have to be telling that boss off. I mean, you got to learn to do it in a way that reduces the risk. So if you do it with brutal honesty, and the definition of brutal is savage or violent, okay, you can expect a very negative outcome. But if you can do it in a way that comes from a place of love, and you have to mean it, and support for that other human being, because you care about that human being, then it comes across a lot better, and it can be received, and it can reduce the risk. And so you got to find a way to be 100% honest and 100% loving. And when you do that, it increases the likelihood it is received. Not all the time. Like sometimes you got to bring a little heat, but it reduces the risk for yourself. The risk is definitely worth the reward, because if you get fired, hallelujah, you are set free. Go find a boss that will care about you, or a company that's a better fit. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the chance you got to take, but you will be set free, one way or another.
Yeah, man, I just had this flash of you talking about your college professor. And I was like, man, wasn't he spot on?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, isn't it about communication? I think it's about being able to influence people, but what influences people? It's communication.
Right.
It's being able to say that. And there's as much as I try to be very eloquent and empathetic in my communication, sometimes the Marine comes out, and I'm a little more direct and blunt.
Yeah, good.
Reflecting on some recent conversations with my kiddos that are in their 20s now. Sometimes I could be very direct, but I do it in love, right? I mean, we do it because we want so much for them. But there's certainly times when I could be a lot more tactful or eloquent or empathetic than I am. Maybe that's something that we could all learn from. But so you kind of started this off talking about being open and honest, and those are two different things. Which of those are more important, if you can say that, and why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. You can make a case for either.
Because like even whenever you defined it, you started by talking about honesty first. Let me define honesty first, and then I'll
Right.
go back. What's the two of those, and then which is more important?
Let me tell you why honesty first, and why my book is called No Honesty, Not No Openness. It's a sexier title. Ego loves honesty, and we all got egos. There's not too many people jumping over each other to grab a book that's trying to teach you to listen, trying to teach you to connect with others, to really shut down yourself and be present for another human being. That's just not a sexy book cover. And so it won't sell. And so I start with honesty, because people are like, yeah, I want to be that. And there's a very important role that honesty has. For the last 15 years, openness is the quick answer, by the way. Openness is the one that's more important. But honesty, for the last 15 years, here's what we've been taught: be your authentic self, the power of vulnerability, Brene Brown, be vulnerable. What's the other one? Identity. All these things are about who? Like you, like the me, myself, and I. All this stuff is targeting that. And so what's happening, and rapidly so, is every human being is trying to create a world for themselves. Like
Yeah.
that's insanity. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and 8 billion people are trying to design a world for themselves. What a lonely place. And I've been there many times in different ways. You'll read in the book, my teenage years, man, I screwed it up. I messed it up all over the place because I was not open to anybody else. And like openness is that missing side of communication that we don't have. Like honesty, like we're starting to figure that out, right? We've been pushed that. But now openness is this ability to create connection between you and another human being. Why? Because it's not about you. It's about you making about that other human being in anything that they share. Like immediately when you told me you're a Marine, I just shut down myself and I just listened to you when we were talking. And I'm like, that's where he comes from. That's his experience. And I just feel so much more connected to you because I'm there for you when you're speaking. And so if people can learn this, they'll really learn how to connect with anyone. But it's so hard to do. And it's exhausting, especially in the beginning when you try hard. But if you get openness, dude, this whole planet is a happier planet. We choose ourselves. And that's the challenge.
Well, as you defined each of those terms for me, I was just thinking like, who are some of my best friends or even family members? Who are the people that I love to talk to? Or if I have an issue or something I need to process through, who are the people that I talk to? It's the people that are open and honest and primarily open with me, right? They'll listen and not be judgmental. They'll be objective and let me kind of process through what I'm speaking. Like I was just kind of thinking through this for the first time, I think, but like if you're communicating with somebody and they're not open, by definition, it means that they are being judgmental. And as a communicator, you're feeling that. And so then that doesn't even give you the ability to communicate openly, honestly, to say
Right.
what's on your mind, right? So it's almost like you have like this misalignment or this this friction even with trying to communicate that through. But
Mark, how do you feel? How do you feel when you're judged? How do you feel?
a whole lot of words come into there. But the first thing that I want to do is just be heard. I think in uh, was it I'm trying that. It was one of the books. I can't remember the title of it now, but it's um, first seek to understand and then to be understood. Carnegie's book.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like if somebody, I'm okay with being judged, but I want to be judged based upon my thoughts, feelings, intent, definitions. I want to be judged on me, not on a false perception of what somebody thinks I
Right.
am.
Right. I mean, it tends to throw people when they're judged. It's almost like unfair is not the word for it, but it just throws people on their heels. And then what happens is walls go up, and it's like, well, you didn't even hear me. I mean, you're already making your preconceived ideas. You've never walked in my shoes, and you're just saying all this stuff. And you could have had probably 150 different answers to that question, depending on the day. Angry at somebody, sad because how they judged you or poorly or wrongly. And sometimes people are all right. But if they're always jumping to judge, it's really about them, and how they feel and what they want. And so what we're trying to do is get people to shut it down completely. Like really zero reservation when you hear somebody. Almost starting from scratch every time you communicate back and forth. And that all you are is present to what's being said. And what happens is you really hear that other human being, but we're so quick to control and manipulate and get what we want out of it or influence. Sometimes influence is a dangerous thing.
Yep.
That we're like, can we just get on with my agenda, please? Slowly back to designing our own world for one. And that's not love. That's not belonging. That's not connection. That's not togetherness. It's all sorts of things break down with a lack of openness.
So, Ken, let me ask you this. So, companies, whether they're healthy or if they know they're not communicating or the culture isn't healthy and they would love to work with you or learn more
Mhm.
about your concepts and your frameworks. What does that look like? How what recommendations do you give, and do you go into organizations, take maybe your EOS implementer hat off for the day, but
Yeah.
you just work specifically on these topics of being open and honest and no honesty?
Yeah, so myself and other no honesty facilitators do this work. We'll go into companies or teams and we'll will help them become more open and honest, really just unlock their ability to communicate so they can solve real problems quickly, so they can unlock their team's potential. I mean, a lot of great things happen when we're just open and honest. It's like you threw all the truth on the table and we're going to go to work on that truth. You can get the book, which is right here if you're on video. If you're not on video, it's No Honesty. You can find it on Amazon or Audible, but you can also do the work yourself. And so how many people will email me or write me through LinkedIn and said, I walked through this with my dad or my significant other. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because that's what we're trying to do, is change how the world communicates. And so we're doing it via workshops, talks, this book. We also have an assessment. Now I feel like I'm salesy, but we have an assessment. It doesn't cost a dime. So is that salesy if it doesn't cost?
No, it's not.
And so you can go on, take this assessment, and it measures how honest and open you are in your personal life and in your work life. And most people are usually shocked with what happens with the outcome, because they're like, whoa, I'm actually more comfortable being honest at work than I am at home. And you got some work to do. Either way, the results come out. You got some work to do in terms of like what's going on at home. That you're not safe to be who you truly and freely want to be, or that you cannot be open with somebody at home, or vice versa. At work, it's a mess, right? Cultures all the time are stifling and squashing people's ability to be open and honest. So the book, the assessment, and workshops are really the three ways to get this into your life.
And Ken, how can they find the assessment? Is it on nohonesty.com?
Yep, KNOW honesty.com. So nohonesty.com. It's called the Pursuit of Honesty Assessment. And I'm sharing all this, and I'm like, so how do you do it with us, or how does it work? You don't necessarily need me for it. You could do it yourself and educate yourself, but it really starts with education. And don't let that word scare you, or please don't roll your eyes at it. But the point is, we've not been educated on how important these two things are. Like I'll do a talk and I'll ask people to raise their hand. And I'll say, how many of you were raised by your family to be honest and to be open based on the definitions? Raise your hand. And maybe 30% of people raise their hand. I'm like, how about in grade school? Usually 10 or 5% of people raise their hand. 10 to 5%. That means 90 to 95% are not being taught this in grade school. So what are you being taught in grade school around communication? Like, what is appropriate communication? Well, if it's not those two things, you can see the madness now that is in everybody's life. Well, how about in high school? Almost nobody raises their hand. How about in college? Some people raise their hand there. How about your first job? Next to nobody. So companies are not teaching their employees how important it is to be honest and open. So then I share that and I'm like, what do you think's going to happen? And so I'm mad at no one about it, but I'm like, it's our responsibility as leaders of your house, leaders of a company. You got to teach this stuff so that your people can have a better life, so they can get what they want out of life, so they can connect with other human beings. So the point is, it's not educated. And so we educate on such a deep level with our clients that they're like, whoa, I get it. And then over time, their communication increases, and so does their success.
I just think a lot of the work that we've done in partnership success, the foundation of all relationships is trust. And there's got to be hundreds and hundreds of different awesome books out there on trust. I just think, how in the world, if trust is truly the foundation, how can you have trust if the people around you are not open and honest? And I don't think you can, so awesome. Well, Ken, I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I certainly am very grateful that you carved out some time to chat with us and to share your insights. And we'll be sure to push people to the website to check out the content there, hopefully the assessment, and learn more about honesty and being open.
All right. God bless you. Appreciate you, Mark.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Partnernomics Show. Don't forget to subscribe to get the newest episodes at thepartnernomicsshow.com.